Hi, this is Andrea. Following two incredible seasons, I'm now back with season 3 of the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. If you're listening or watching for the first time, I am the mother to a beautiful autistic daughter with whom I learn a whole lot every day. This has been my motivation to found and host the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. So join me and my guests in this mission to raise awareness and increase understanding. Together, let's make this world one that embraces and accepts difference. Welcome to the Neurodiverse Voices podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm in the company of someone I really admire, and I'm always in awe of how much she does for the neurodivergent community. I think we met at the beginning of 2024 at an event.
Yeah.
And yes, she's neurodivergent herself. She's a mom of neurodivergent children, and she's the CEO of Autism Oxford UK. Hi, Kim.
Hi, nice to have you here. And it's nice to get to do this with you, which is great. So.
Thank you. And it's nice to finally have come to Autism Oxford, which is where we are recording the interview from.
Absolutely, yeah. You're overdue. So it's great to be able to finally get to meet and have a chat and talk more about neurodivergence, which is my favourite topic.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so to begin with, can we start by you sharing a summary of your journey with neurodivergence so far, and in terms of your personal life and as a parent, that's personal life, sorry, and what have been some of the key moments and turning points that shaped your journey?
Absolutely. So I think there's been a range of things. So I'm neurodivergent. Found out I was dyslexic at university after many years of struggling through school and bumbling my way through. I am a mum to 3 beautiful children, 2 of which are neurodivergent, so autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, as well as I've got a son who is definitely think is also neurodivergent, but he's on his own journey in thinking about how that fits with his identity, so very different. And both of my girls are very different in terms of their neurodivergent profile. So one is autistic with the PDA profile, and one is autistic with a learning disability alongside kind of much more of that internalized presentation as well. So very different needs in our house, which is great. My middle daughter was the first one to have her formal diagnosis out of the rest of us as a family. So her journey started when she was 6. So she's now 60. So it's been a long journey, a long battle with the education system typically, but also the healthcare system. And my youngest daughter got her diagnosis at the age of 10, so much more recently. And actually her diagnosis came a bit more of a surprise to us, which was really interesting, given the work that we do as well. So professionally, for family health, professionally, I'm also an autism consultant nurse and a registered learning disability nurse, which is great in terms of thinking much more holistically about people, and developed a real passion and interest for autism and mental health very early on in my career, and then moved into a specialism around PDA later on in my career. So wear many hats as the CEO, autism consultant nurse, and as a very busy son mum as well.
Yeah, very much. And actually, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask about your book that I'm following you on social media, as you know, because you mentioned you have a 16-year-old. And your book is about your journey from being a teen mom to becoming a CEO. Can you tell us detail on the book?
So my son is 20. So my middle child is 16. Absolutely. So so my book was coming out later in the summer, Teen Mum to CEO, which is a memoir type book, but hopefully will really inspire other people like me who are neurodivergent, a teen mum, have disability within the family, which may be other kind of not just around the neurodivergence, will hopefully inspire them that they can also be just as successful too. But also hopefully we'll start to break down some of the barriers about the views and opinion of the independent healthcare sector as well, and what that means. I'm a real NHS baby by background, but left the NHS about 5 years ago, feeling quite disheartened, quite deflated that I couldn't have the impact that I wanted to have for people. So, and that's where Autism Oxford UK came into play, and I'm able to lead a fabulous service that provides that. So the book really looks at that much more widely, but really champions that underdog.
Yeah, I'm very keen to read it, especially as the daughter of a teen mom as well. Well, my dad was not a teenager anymore because he was 20, but and I think that's fantastic to actually have young parents, because it's a lot easier for you to connect. You know, I remember they used to take me clubbing, which is, back in the day, that's pretty cool.
That's what you do. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what was a real defining moment when I had my son, and school was hard, life was hard, and the book explores that early adverse life events and what that looked like. But the teen mum was the point. I had two choices. I could either go down and be a statistic that everything I read was telling me what I should be. Should be on benefits. I shouldn't be successful. He shouldn't be successful. He's going to have antisocial behaviour. All the evidence base that picks that up. Yeah. Or I had the choice to change the narrative. And I'm a very stubborn person. So I changed the narrative, and I have changed the narrative. I'm not saying it's been easy, because it hasn't. It's been really hard. I'm very lucky I have a very supportive husband, and we've done it together. But actually was a real pivotal point. And, everything was going against me, neurodivergent, dyslexic, teen mum, I was homeless, all those things that we know will disadvantage people. But I didn't let them define me.
Yeah. And look how much you have achieved so far. So yeah, well done you, Harry. Very pleased to hear your story. So how was it growing up? You mentioned that it was difficult in school, but how was it growing up with dyslexia, especially before it was well understood, because it was a different time back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So my brother is dyslexic, and quite overtly dyslexic. So what I mean is he has significant challenges with reading and writing. So it was really obvious in his education. He didn't go on to further education. He's very much a skills man, phenomenal at what he does, like very skilled, but it's not academic. That's absolutely fine. Whereas I think for me, people could see my academic ability and potential. So there was a lot of frustration, I think, from teachers going, she could do better. She could do more. But, I remember sitting, even at primary school, you have reading time, and sat there trying to read this book, and I read the same page about 4 times. I'm like, nothing's going in. And it took me so long to read. I could read, but just the effort to read was so much, and it just wouldn't go in. Processing was really hard. But to flip it, for my dyslexia, a lot of it's around audio. So I don't process audio information better. Actually, I process written information better. But it's slow and it's hard. So it conflicts, and people don't really understand that. So, and I didn't understand that very well. I've got a lot of FOMO, I think, at primary school and in secondary school, and then into university until I had my assessment, where I thought that related to my intelligence, that I clearly wasn't clever, clearly was stupid, clearly shouldn't be in these academic arena spaces, particularly when I went to university. When actually that wasn't the case at all. My knowledge is pretty sound. It's okay. And I like learning. I enjoy learning when it's in a way that's easily accessible to me.
Yeah, I relate with that as well. I never really liked, and I don't know if I'm dyslexic or not, but I learn by practicing. Yeah, you can show me something, but I'm like you. I need to have the written information as a backup. Yeah. But my worst marks in school or grades were always with history, for example. Yeah. Even Portuguese, which is my native language, it was quite difficult because there was a lot of reading and literature, and it's definitely not my strength.
No, absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? We expect people to learn and conform in a very certain way. Yeah. I still had to this day no phonological knowledge whatsoever. I've learnt to read by memory and what words look like, about repetition. Yeah. My speech is still a real challenge with that. So as going through training as a nurse, I didn't really pass in placements because I couldn't pronounce the medication. I could spell you the medication, interestingly. And like, when you're dyslexic, how do you spell it? I was like, I can, but I can memorize how that's spelled. But I can't pronounce it. I could tell you what the drug did. I could tell you all the contradictions that drug. I could tell you the dosage, but I can't say it. And, I had some mentors who were like, well, I might not be able to pass you if you can't say it. So I had to work really hard. And that was before the times of things like we have now, Google, where you can put it in and it will say it back to you. So, that was really challenging. And then that made me confidence where I think maybe I'm not a good nurse. an excellent nurse. I'm very good at what I do. But those things are barriers to you. So you have to work hard to overcome those.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks for sharing. And can you, well, sorry, I'm kind of following because I need to follow. Notice. But next question we kind of covered it, which was, can you recall how dyslexia impacted your education and self-esteem? So that's exactly how we did. Any particular strengths? I think we covered this as well. Dex, your dyslexic brain brings
Loads. Absolutely loads. And I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing now if I wasn't dyslexic. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that. And, I listen to people like Richard Branson, who's also dyslexic, and, comments. I think I've read, he was on the Diary of the CEO podcast, and he was talking about, he was in a board meeting and they were talking finances. And then he was going, yes, and nodding along. And his finance director pulled him out of that meeting and went, you have no idea what we're on about, do you? And he was like, I run this multi-million-pound business. And he's like, no, I don't. You all know what you're doing. So I'm happy with that. I trust you guys. And so then he explained it as around kind of profits, net margins and all that stuff. And that, oh my gosh, I so relate to that. Oh my gosh. But the same as him, for me, is the creativity that my dyslexia brings is outstanding. And you need that as a CEO, as a business owner, as a leader of an organization, because you're constantly having to adapt all the time, whether you're adapting to your workforce, whether you're adapting to a client, if you're a product-based organization, challenges in that kind of logistics. So dyslexia and leadership is phenomenal and is such a power. It keeps you agile. It keeps those solutions going, and it makes me a very good strategic thinker. I have 5 to 10 year plan for the organization. I'm very visionary, and I'm able to articulate that back out to my team as well. So you're bringing people along with you, and that's because of my dyslexia, not because of me necessarily. Dyslexia is part of my self-identity.
Yeah, and it makes you a good example to follow, and makes it easy to for people to work with you.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge with that, though, is that, we've certainly seen a big change probably in the last 15 years to moving in the workforce. Is there's a real expectation to have formal qualifications. Whereas when my granddad left school, he went onto the farms. He then got a job as an engineer. He had no engineering qualifications, but he was a phenomenal engineer. His garage was filled with tools, and everything was being fixed. Like any toys, like you didn't just go to shop and buy a new one. And in that creative and solution focus, but didn't have a qualification to his name. So for a lot of dyslexic people, getting qualifications can be really difficult, or the confidence to even try, just not even going to go there, even though might have the ability to do so, just like my brother, particularly on that one, which has then become a real barrier now, because my granddad could get that job as an engineer without that qualification because they looked at the person and the abilities. Whereas now, very much that, well, you don't have that qualification. You're not even getting shortlisted for an interview. And that's a real shame. And we certainly here at Autism Oxford really focus on the person through that values-based recruitment rather than just looking at the qualifications. Because that gives you better opportunities.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think it's something having kind of shifted careers recently. Yeah. I think I was seen as the person and not as my professional background only. Of course, the professional background helped. But if you want to change your career, if you don't have the previous experience, there's always a barrier there for you to want to do something different. But what's the problem with that?
But you might be the best person for that.
Exactly.
You might have the right qualities, the right mindset, all those things. And so I just think we're quite narrowed, unfortunately. And I think we miss a trick then in our workforce development, which is a real shame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's putting barriers in the opportunities that everyone can have. And at the end of the day, a degree, yes, you have the qualifications. Yes, you paid for it, but someone maybe without a degree can do
absolutely
exactly the same job as well, or even better sometimes.
Yeah. Well, if you look at these business leaders, like Karen Brady, for example, I'm meeting her at the moment, phenomenal lady, not a qualification to her name. She did her A-levels, didn't go to university, but look how successful she is. And so it's the right personality and character. I couldn't do her job in the football world at all, by no means, but great job. You got, Stephen Bartlett does the Diary of the CEO. Again, no qualifications. Again, I couldn't do his job all day, every day, but he probably couldn't do mine either. And that these leaders that we're seeing, which is proof that the qualification isn't, and we should make sure that we're not focusing on that, particularly when we think about neurodivergence as well, because we will really miss a whole opportunity of this workforce that will be a real asset.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of your own lived experience and parenting, how has it informed the way that you parent your children? What impact does it have on you as a mother?
Hugely. So, a teen mum, is very conscious of what people thought about me, thought about my parenting, didn't want to be that statistic, which I talk a lot about in my book that's upcoming. But that had to change when I had our daughter, because that very controlled super nanny type parenting, which is what I thought the world expected me to do. And that's where the judgment and the stigma for being a teen mum would decrease. Couldn't do that, because actually, as an autistic ped here, everything that instills is the worst thing for her. And actually, I was causing her a lot of distress as a mum by trying to parent in that way. So, me and my husband, we had lots of conversations about this and thinking about how we then unparent, because that's what we do. We unparent. And that feels quite anxiety provoking. Am I doing the right thing? Am I going to cause more harm to my daughter? There's not much evidence base around PDA. So actually, are we doing the right things in terms of the approach? But we're following intuition with her, and been a game changer. Life has been so transformational, where we were in a place where there was lots of distress, lots of physical harm to herself and others. And that doesn't exist anymore through unparenting, unschooling for her. And it's been transformational. That's been hard. And there's been moments where I've sat previously when she was at primary school, before we unschooled, where you have the same case sat there saying to you, are you sure you're not seeing things that are there because of your job? Like, don't know how's my job being used against me here as a SEN parent? Or are you sure it's not your parenting when you're in CAMS and they're doing their assessments? How do you know it's not you that's the problem? Was the very direct question I had. And I'm sat there and go, well, we've got 3 children, and the other 2 don't get emotionally dysregulated, and they don't need to, harm themselves or others to feel a little bit better in terms of managing that regulation. It seems to satisfy looking, but I'm a nurse, so I know the questions in terms of, I know how to respond. There's loads of people that don't. And that's why I do what I do with a living, because I want to be that person that doesn't give that judgment to that family, because my own lived experiences, even with my knowledge and background, still being used against me. And actually, I was then interacting with colleagues as a nurse, as a professional. They were my colleagues. I was very well respected. But then on the flip side, as soon as I was changing into mum and accessing those services, I was discriminated against. I was told that, again, that suddenly all that knowledge and wealth that they respected yesterday, suddenly didn't count because I'm now mum. And I'm sort of going, I'm the same person. And we get the same in terms of private versus NHS services as well. Suddenly, when I was in the NHS, well respected, credible, expert in my field, private service, no, you're just private service. You're just trying to get money. You're like, no, that's absolutely not the case at all. So we've got a lot of work to do, and that's really informed my parenting as well as my career, and they've interacted. And with my youngest daughter, we had similar conversations with the Senko, similar sort of responses back. Are you sure she's not just copying her sister? You gave me assurance that you'd learned from my daughter's journey with you, and you saw the transformation in her as we changed parenting styles and approaches at school. Why are we having the same conversations? Why does this feel like deja vu? So, I talk a lot about the battle scars that us as SEN parents hold as a result of those interactions. And one of our ethoses at Autism Oxford as a result of that is we have to be aware of the footprint we leave on people's journeys. A simple interaction on the phone inquiring about service will leave a footprint. And it's a very powerful, very small. It might not feel very big, but it has a significant impact when you listen, you validate. Massive difference. And you can literally change the tracks of someone's journey. And I wish I had that. I wish I had that through my SEN journey with my 2 girls. We're very lucky now. My youngest daughter is in a specialist provision now. She's flourishing, doing beautifully well, but that was a really hard battle because we didn't have the school support for an EHCP. We didn't have the school support that she needed, a specialist provision. So I had to work incredibly hard to be able to evidence that. And the same for my middle daughter, who's now 16, unschooled, doesn't have a qualification to her name. She's just about to start her acro gymnastics level 1 coaching course. She has a job. She's supported through her EHCP and is absolutely thriving. So all this influences everything I do every day.
Yeah, and I know, it's really sad to think that we keep being questioned. And not my personal case. We are quite lucky with the school, even though she should be in a specialist setting. But that's if we keep talking about it, we'll stay here the whole day. Yeah, but it's actually fascinating to see you, me, other parents, in Oxfordshire and everywhere, who kind of put their hands to work. And actually, it's sad that we have to go through these difficult and challenging journeys, but then I think we are all making a positive impact.
Absolutely. And I think, there was a pivot point when I left the NHS, and this sounds so horribly cold, but this learnt helplessness, I think, as some parents we can get. And I certainly felt it. I wanted someone to come and fix. I want someone to come and support, make our situation better. The reality is there's no one there that's going to do that, whether that's a diagnosis, whether that's a therapy input. They can support and help and nurture. Ultimately, I'm the one who's going to make the difference in my family's life and whole. My kids are going to be the game changers in their life journey. Yep. My job is to scaffold and to navigate. There isn't a system, there isn't a service out there that's going to just suddenly make this all okay. And that is really hard when you're up at 2:00 in the morning. Your young person is really dysregulated. They're hitting, they're biting, they're screaming, trying to end their own life, whatever it might be. For someone to sit there and go, well, actually, you've got to hold that. And that's a hard message. And it's often not well delivered. It's often delivered, well, we don't have a service for you. We don't get it. The reality is, no matter how good a CAM service they are, or how good of a psychiatrist or nurse, they're not sat there with you at 2:00 in the morning. They can give you all the advice. They can help with medication. If you can access all that, that's great. You're really lucky. But the reality is that's only going to influence. It's not going to change everything. And I think when you can switch your mindset to that, there's an element of grieving that goes in.
Yep.
But there's also then an element of a real breath of fresh air of like, okay, this is the cards I've been dealt with. This is where we're at, but we're going to make the most out of it. And very much fits within therapy. So acceptance commitment therapy, which was developed by GP, the chronic depression, actually, and trying to help patients move forward who've been really resistant to medication. And it looks very much like, well, you've got a really short deal here. Yeah, your cards you've been dealt with are rubbish. But the reality is that's not going to change. But what can change? What else can we move around it? Where else can sit that with your values? And I very much try and take that mindset to try and help move things forward. Otherwise, we will be here all day talking about how rubbish the sense system is.
We would, for sure. But well, maybe just not one day. And what have your children taught you about neurodivergence that you didn't know initially, or you might have misunderstood?
Oh, loads, absolutely loads. And I think ADHD in females, particularly, and it's not always the young person or the boy, typically in the class, chucking the chair at the teacher. So much more breadth to that. Thought we were at masking in ADHD. And actually, I was like, wow, actually, you know what? I did a lot of masking as a dyslexic person growing up. Wow, actually, that's quite significant in how that starts to interlay. Now, we understand masking much better within our autistic community. What we don't understand better is about the camouflaging in our autistic community. As parents will often talk about masking. And, my middle daughter was an ultimate masker. And she taught me, wow, look how we can change and be a chameleon and move and agile. But we don't want to do that at the detriment of our own mental health and well-being or our own self-identity. But we forget then there's other camouflaging, so compensatory, where I'll force myself to do something because I know that's what's expected to conform. So I might force myself to do eye contact. Masking is when I will suppress my autistic traits to try and fit in. So I might really want to talk to you about gymnastics, but I know you don't want to hear it. So I'm going to not talk about it. But it's going to preoccupy me. Then we have assimilation, which she does in abundance, which is where she will role model, imitate, mimic other people. And she's taught me so much in terms of my own clinical practice is actually the assimilation we know has poorer health outcomes around mental health and well-being. We use that an awful lot. It's also taught me a lot that actually that can be a good thing as long as we use it in the right context, the right amount, and it doesn't over impede in terms of our own self-identity and who we are. And I think the other thing they've taught me is flexibility is key, and being agile, and things won't always happen. And actually, you know what? I qualified as a nurse. I was quite happy in my community learning disability nurse job. Found final, I'm set. I'm going to retire. I'm great. And I look now and I smile and I'm like, blank. But what they've taught me, my girls have taught me, is actually think much wider. Don't put your own glass ceiling in place. And think we've all been guilty as some parents where we've done that with our own children. It's like, we grieve for the things we think we've lost. They're never going to be in employment. They're never going to be able to do that for themselves. They're never going to be able to dress themselves, all those things. Well, I was that. I'm going to put my hands up. I didn't think she would ever have a job. And look at her. At 16, she has a job that she loves. So vacation, so not just a job. She's earning her own money. She's valued member of that team. I couldn't be prouder. But that's made that I needed to open my mind up.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, because with mine, I question, with my daughter, I question all the time, will she ever be able to?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm in grief, but it's one of the things that worries me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
we just need to continue
win for the ride and let us see where it takes us, rather as trying to guess where it's going to take us. I think is probably been a big learning curve. Yeah. That's something that's really helping for my youngest daughter now coming through as well, and changing that mindset for her, which is great.
Yeah, that's great to see. And we think living more in the present, which is sometimes quite difficult, is important as well.
Absolutely.
And day by day, just being there and supporting them is very important. So we've also touched base on this, but how do you advocate for your children within the systems and trying to have them included?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting out at the very beginning of the journey, I would definitely say services like Sendiaz were just so supportive and so helpful, particularly when you're being challenged, and you're being challenged in terms of what you're doing, how you're parenting, all those things. Having an independent person who's going, no, actually, we need to look at these things, really, really helped. So I would always advise that in the start, and to help advocacy. As I got more confident in what I was saying and how to advocate, and learning about my own children and their own needs, because you need to know that to be able to advocate for them.
Yeah, of course.
So again, we're expecting parents to be specialists, and you think, that's an awful lot of a tall order. We don't ask them to be specialists in physical health conditions that their children have. So why are we asking them to be specialists in the neurodivergence their children have? But that's where we're at. So learning that, and lots of information, really then helps me to work out how to advocate. The bit I think that often we miss as some parents is learning about the system. So we can learn about the neurodivergence. That's going to help me advocate, building the confidence to advocate. Brilliant. Then I need to know the systems, not the people, the systems that I'm navigating into, because actually that helps me manage my expectations, but also it helps me understand what levers I need to pull at the right time in the system. And also when you get the decline, we're not going to assess for the EHCP, knowing, okay, so if that happens, and why that's likely to happen, because we know that often that's just the default. They've not even really scrutinized the information you've given. Is I know that I'm likely to then have to say, okay, I need to go to mediation, I need to go to tribunal for my child's case to even be properly looked at. I'm not saying that happens everywhere, but we know that does happen. We know the volume that our poor SEND teams are having to get through in terms of applications is just insurmountable for the amount of team members they have. And we also know those team members don't have all the training. They're not trained in autism. They're not trained in ADHD. And again, I'm asking the parent to be a specialist. I'm now also asking that SEND care case coordinator to be a specialist in a range of different needs. And that feels a bit unfair. So when I understand that as a parent, one, I'm not wasting energy on being so angry and frustrated. Two, okay, I need to make sure I give them the knowledge and the information. I need to meet them where they are. I'm likely to get more engagement that way, rather than the defensive eyes. So for advocacy, they are my kind of cornerstones that I think are really important. And they've really helped me to be able to navigate and advocate for my girls. Still not been easy. We still got gaps. We still don't have a service for my middle daughter around her continence needs because she's got a health phobia. She can't access health services, but we have no one who can support her to access the continence service. CAMS will say it's not them. Paediatricians say it's not them. So we bounce ourselves around the system, haven't cracked back in the system because I don't think the system knows. So none of us know. So we're just still sat with an unmet need, unfortunately, but we're working on it.
Yeah. Eventually we will get there. It's very challenging to navigate the system because there's no consistency. There's no standardized approach across the different systems. And it's just increasingly difficult. And since we touched base on the HCPs, I'm sure you've heard or you've read some articles about the government thinking about scrapping them. What are your views?
Yeah, so I think the views are kind of, we see some things happening. So we know for private schools, for example, they've had the VAT added into private school fees, the students. We know that there was a caveat in that it wouldn't apply to young people with SEN originally. That was then drilled down. No. It'll only apply to those young people who've got an EHCP in place. So we're seeing some changes like, okay, well, here we go, government, what are we up to? And then we can see now they're going in and going, well, actually, mainstream school, we're just going to just scrap EHCPs. Like, if you're a mainstream school, you don't need an EHCP, which is absolutely bonkers because we know there's a lot of young people who are stuck in a mainstream service that doesn't or can't meet their need, waiting for a specialist provision. And we don't have the specialist provision. So in principle, if you have a EHCP, you have a high level of need or specialist need and you need a bespoke way of learning, get that, understand that. We have communication interaction bases, which really successfully integrate those young people within the EHCP into a mainstream setting. So we need to lose that in this mess of ways of approaches to EHCPs. But we also need to make sure that we have the specialist provision set up. And I'm not saying just specialist schools. I'm saying more creative ways of educating our young people. And schooling, how does that look like? How do we create that community? So it's a different community to home ed. We're not off doing lots of lovely activities or shared learning in space because that's not right. What are we thinking about learning? Are we thinking, is it formal qualifications? Or are we thinking about basic life skills and do they need to be built in? So I think before we can even think about whether we should keep EHCPs or not EHCPs, we need to sort out actually, we saying our learning profiles need to look like for our young people as a whole. Yeah. And we know our education system just generally outdated in how we educate our young people. Across the world, we're probably one of the least performing countries in terms of, so I think we need to start there first, high level, and work our way down to the granular around EHCP. So my view would be very much to jump in the gun a little bit, and it's a financially driven decision rather than thinking about actually for the best for our future workforce coming through on our future communities as they grow.
Yeah, because hopefully they don't expect or they shouldn't expect neurodivergent children or children with disabilities to not to be able to work, that they should actually think the other way around. And it's not good.
There's no point wasting my daughter's energy, stress, cognitive load, learning history, geography, the sciences, maths, English, when she's never going to use those in her job or workplace. Maths and English can absolutely help in terms of some of those things. When we switched, where she's been unschooled the last couple of years, and we've been reasonably well supported actually through her EHCP with this, is that the focus has been getting her ready to enter the workplace in gymnastics, because we know that's the career she wants, it's her interest. So we've been in lots of work around her being a young leader, shadowing sessions. Then we've worked to actually help and watching and observing how a session's planned. Then it's you plan part of the session. Now you plan all the session. Now I'm going to deliver your sessions you planned. Now, then I'm going to partially deliver it. You do some. And that gradual build, that's taught her more in the last 2 years than her sat at school. So I think we need to think much more creatively.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe the government should have more dyslexic people.
Yeah, I would agree.
So as a CEO, and now focusing a bit more on Autism Oxford, Well, I think again we are having just a nice conversation. But is there anything else that you'd like to add in terms of the way it influences your how you lead Autism Oxford UK?
So, we're a lovely blended organisation at Autism Oxford UK. What I mean by that is we're a team of professionals with a clinical background, educational background, and a lived experience background. Now, we've worked really hard and we're incredibly proud to build a whole career pathway around the lived experience, so our peer support team. Now, we set out a few years ago and we worked with what was called Health Education England at the time, which are now dissolved and no longer, with another government's decision to get rid of them. And we co-developed alongside other organisations the Autism Peer Support Capability Framework. So how do we use lived experience in a professional way, and how do we measure like competence and capability? So it gave us a lovely framework to start with. Now, as an organisation, we've gone even one step further, and we now have interns, and we work with the local employment services to make sure we've got internship around these roles. We have our peer support workers, which are based on that capability framework. We have peer support practitioners. So we're getting that extra level of specialism coming in. How do we consolidate that? How do we influence? We're just about to go out to advert for our peer support consultant role, which will be a role that goes against the 4 pillars of consultant work, similar to the consultant nurse. So leadership, clinical expertise, thinking about how you influence kind of nationally as well as locally, complex case holding, all those things that we would be expecting, and trailblazing that peer support work. And then we have our lead peer support practitioner who provide that operational leadership around lived experience. So what a great career pathway. We're not just talking about someone with lived experience. We're talking about actually lived experience being a career in itself. It's a specialist knowledge in itself. And within that team, lived experience companies, we're all diverse. So we have people with a parent carer background. We have dyslexic people, autistic people, ADHD, because actually that's really important. And it's really important we encompass as much of that lived experience as we possibly can across. And they're seen as equal here at Awesome. So we have no hierarchy in terms of you're a nurse, you're better than speech and language, or a speech and language better than peer support practitioner. Everyone comes with their own expertise and they're all treated the same, which is brilliant. We're just about to publish the Ashwin Baker model, which describes this model so we can share that best practice nationally as well, which we're very excited to be sharing as we go through. And that means that we're an all-inclusive organisation, which is great. And we work really hard to be inclusive across the board. So things like we do is our team updates. They are recorded as well as written. If you're a busy mum, for example, having the earbuds in while you're cooking dinner, listening to me talking about the update, so much easier than trying to send for an email.
I'm for that. Great.
Some people want the email because actually I want to go back and I need to be able to go back and, what did she say about that? Oh, it's easier than trying to listen through. And we have some dyslexic team members who can't read or write who work with us, and they need to be able to access that too. And we have some people with a learning disability where actually the audio gets much better. So, and we write everything in plain English as well to make sure it's as accessible as it can be. Got a lot more work to do. We're very excited, and we'll obviously be sharing that across our social media. So we're sharing that good practice as we develop and evolve. But these are just some of the examples of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And we forget to tell people about them because they're just normal. And when I'm a bit like, oh, don't you do that at work? Like, oh, what do you mean you don't record your updates as well as write them? What's going on? So we're trying to make sure that we're very conscious about those things.
That's brilliant. You're making me want to come and work here.
Oh, be that. Yeah.
So in terms of people experiencing an overlapping of different of traits of dyslexia, autism, and ADHD, for example, what are your thoughts on supporting people who had this intersection?
So important. So our name really doesn't serve us well. We inherited the name from a fantastic legacy that Autism Oxford UK was. But we know autism often is not in isolation. So why would we just focus on autism? It's one of the things that I think really grates me as a professional, actually, of that we go through you go for an autism assessment. It's great. Oh, I think you might be ADHD as well. Great. Can you help? No. Right. So I've got to go through this whole journey again with someone who doesn't know me, and I've got to regurgitate a lot of the same information at the beginning around development history and stuff, which is very similar. It's really unhelpful. So we offer all neurodivergent support. So dyslexia, we link with someone locally because we don't have that specialist resource internally. Autism, dyscalculia, learning disability, learning difficulties that come into that, so any other specific ones, dysgraphia. It's important you can access that all in one place, or you're at least accessing a team that's got an understanding of everything, because the intersectionality is so important. And it's important as well because it's the accurate self-identity, because inattention in ADHD, it could be absolutely ADHD. It could also be your autism and PDA, a demand avoidance strategy. It could also be very much part of a dyspraxia profile. So we don't want to be double counting characteristics when actually they're probably part of a type of neurodivergence. So I find it really hard when we have services, and a lot of services, including the NHS, which will just solely focus on one area. So I'm not saying we just assess everyone for all neurodivergence, because there's this element of over-assessing, but you should be able to access a team that's got an understanding of all those to be able to screen through that process.
Yeah, because imagine that you come for an autism assessment and you might have ADHD traits. So by the team having the understanding, then you can either do the assessment yourselves or signpost.
Yeah. We don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to misdiagnose. In autism, one of the criteria is around repetitive movement and speech. So interesting, I assessed a young person yesterday, and Will Carrington loved the assessment. But he sat there and he's doing this with his hands, he was fidgeting, then he's talking to me over here, and then he slides with his arm out his t-shirt, and he's talking away to me, sharing all his lovely interests. And I'm assessing autism, not assessing ADHD. So that was ADHD movement seeking, really restless, really struggling to, trying so hard to keep engaged with me. That was not a stimming type repetitive movement that I was seeing. That's very different. And if you don't have the skills or knowledge of ADHD, you could quite easily count that as part of the autistic profile. So we're not going to have an accurate assessment. And I do worry, not just because of the boom in, assessments and people coming forward. I think we've had that boom, but we now have a whole wide workforce across the NHS and independent sector who are not suitably skilled or experienced enough in all neurodivergence to be completing these assessments. So we'll see probably in 10 years' time people coming back around to reassess when the other neurodivergence might be being thought of or looked at, or our understandings change slightly, because I don't think we give enough time, because we're trying to deal with the whole nationally, unfortunately.
Yeah, that happened with my daughter. She had her autism assessments in 2022, and I'm pretty sure she has ADHD as well. So we are now kind of starting down process again.
Yeah, and obviously you go again. So
it's the government and the systems not being creative, because they should be more efficient. And if they were more efficient, then the waiting lists would not be so long, for example. And
so we're asking a lot of our NHS. So bearing in mind, the NHS was set up after World War II and was set up to provide access to healthcare, free access. Now, I always bug me because it's not free. You can pay for it for our tax. So it's not free, but it's free at a point of access. So I'm not having to hand over cash over the counter. It was set up for emergency basic physical health. It wasn't set up for mental health. It wasn't set up for complex needs. It wasn't set up for neurodivergence. And as we've gone along the way, we've bolted all these extra things on. And I'm not saying that's not necessarily the wrong thing to do, but when we bolt it rather than integrate it, this is why we've got a very complex, clunky system that is now breaking, because it's been built on dodgy foundations, ultimately, because we built on this little foundation, which was really solid for this, what we developed and brilliant. But the foundation was never built enough to be such a wide encompassing of all health conditions, including preventative health stuff and public health. It was never set up for that. So, while I agree, and I'm a big ambassador that we should have free to access health, and I mean, we should be paying for it for our tax, as well as paying for it privately. I think we need to bin it off and start again. build up really strong foundation. What does that now need to look like for the 21st century? So we've got a good, robust, high quality healthcare system that the world is going to be envious of us again for.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because science advanced so much these years. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to go back to basics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rather than just keep trying to solve everything on.
Yeah.
And hope it works.
Yeah. And then just working on crisis mode, because that's what absolutely these days. And in your experience, what tends to be misunderstood and overlooked when we talk about dyslexia? So comparing dyslexia to other types of neurodivergence.
I feel very singled out actually as a neurodivergent person in the neurodivergent community. And it's not felt like it's not the cool kid on the block in the neurodivergent community, interestingly. So autism is often the first type of neurodivergence we think about when we talk about neurodivergence. It's the one that we've had a lot of trailblazing over the last 10, 15 years in developing that understanding, awareness, much broader acceptance, which has been brilliant, absolutely needed. Then we've got ADHD following behind, but it's probably the ugly sister to autism behind in terms of that hierarchy in our neurodivergent community. And then we've got dyslexia, who's down here. And then even worse, we've got dyspraxia, probably sat under dyslexia in terms of our understanding, acceptance, awareness in our neurodivergent community as well as outwardly as well. And that's really interesting because I think it's probably only been in the last few years where I've really correctly said I am a dyslexic person. I'm a dyslexic leader. My colleagues and, certainly my girls, my middle daughter was diagnosed 10 years ago. We were proudly saying she's autistic and beautifully autistic because she is. But the dyslexia is not quite there yet. And it's from both communities. And I think our community is felt to probably be a bit much smaller in terms of it. And there's still a real misconception that it's all just around learning at school. Now, yes, it is a specific learning difficulty, but learning goes much wider than just school. I learn how to maintain a house. I learn how to budget. I learn how to manage a business. I learn how, whatever it might be, a parent. So we forget the learning much wider and how dyslexia makes all those things a lot harder. So for me, I think that's been the biggest barrier around understanding of my type of neurodivergence is that it's just not there yet, even in our neurodivergent community, and the acceptance isn't there yet.
Yeah, it feels like it's overlooked and solicited more just
Over there.
Yeah. And do you feel that's the representation of dyslexia in leadership, and we talked about Richard Branson and before, and professional spaces is improving, and what's still missing?
Yeah, I think it really helps with people like Richard Branson being really open about their dyslexia. One, because it validates people like me coming up through the ranks and go, oh, okay, I'm not alone. I don't need to think about the imposter syndrome. I don't need to be like, I am worthy of this space and this position. So I think that really helps. I think there still is a lot of stigma. I think there's still a lot of, in different business worlds. I'm very lucky because of the sector that I work in, work with people who are often very accepting. But I also work with some neurodivergent individuals who are very keen on spelling and grammar, and find me incredibly frustrating because there's lots of spelling and grammar issues in my work. I mitigate that through my professional reports by having a qualified proofreader that does anything you wouldn't know looking at my written formal work. But if you get an email from me, and some of the texts, I think the team has said, they're a bit weird and wonderful, but you get used to them after a while when you get to know me. But from a leadership point of view, that becomes a barrier because people will make a quick judgment when you're sending an introductory email, for example. They'll make a snap judgment based on that spelling or grammar in that email. So we've still got some more work to do around that. I think I'm at a disadvantage for being a woman and dyslexic, and in a space where it's often very male dominated and where people are very corporate and very, very focused. So whereas I'm not any of those, and I'm just learning that it's okay to be who I am, and I am who I am. And you take me as out, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. You might not like me, that's fine. Also, you might really like me too, and that's fine too. That I think comes with growth and a bit of age, I think, to be honest, rather than go, oh, please like me. I really want to not going to be for everyone. But really challenging those stigmas at that high level around dyslexia is really important in those conversations. So I am very open with any conversations I'm having at that senior level across the system. So, well, I'm dyslexic. Because literally, the credibility will be, well, it's dyslexia. Okay, you know what? She's good at what she does. Hey, maybe I need to think about dyslexia in my system. So influencing that way where we can. Yeah.
And shifting the stigma towards strengths. It's just a lot of strengths and
Huge, yeah.
So having worked in the corporate world in this country for 13, 14 years, I feel you because, taking the neurodivergence out of the conversation, I felt very often that I could not be myself. Yeah. And it can be quite difficult.
Well, but anything until you stop Gary, you guys instead. Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm behind.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your hopes for how society will better understand and support people with dyslexia and neurodivergence?
Yeah, I really hope that it is much more widely accepted. I think my next thing, which I really hope changes around dyslexia, is access to timely assessments.
Mm-hmm.
Oxfordshire have a policy in place where we identify people as dyslexic learners. We don't formally assess and diagnose dyslexia,
Right.
which I think is just absolutely bonkers.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, so both of my girls are dyslexic, but have been identified as dyslexic learners. We paid privately for dyslexic assessments for them because it's not something that we fund. Through our statutory education system. So, because the motion is that why do I need formal assessment when I know they're dyslexic? Well, just treat them like a dyslexic learner. Well, that's great, but actually it helps them with workplace and helps with university. We also see a lot of practices where schools go, well, yeah, we think they're dyslexic. We can't access assessment unless we fund it. Go to university because you're going there anyway. They'll sort out, they'll fund it. So there's an element of just passing the buck along the line. So it'd have been so much more helpful if I had an understanding of my dyslexia rather than me just thinking, well, I'm not like my brother because I can read. And people understanding, well, that doesn't mean I'm not dyslexic. It just means it's very different. Yeah, absolutely. So that timely assessment's my first thing that I'd like to see as a campaign to change in our understanding and the importance of that. I think we're getting there with autism and I think we're getting there with ADHD and the importance of having an assessment, the importance of a timely assessment despite the lengthy waiting list. But we don't have that on the agenda for dyslexia. And I think it's more complicated because it's not a health need, whereas at the moment, autism and ADHD sit in that medical model. So it confuses things. Where does that sit within this very complex system? So trying to campaign and champion that to come ahead. So it's probably my biggest thing in the immediate term. Well, lots of other things, but again, we'll be able to take. Going to take over the world one day.
And going back to Autism Oxford, are there any exciting developments that reflect your values around this experience, inclusion, and empowered neurodivergent people?
Yeah, so we're continuing to grow our team. We're a lovely team now of over 50 team members, which is phenomenal in the space of 4 years. So that's grown exponentially, and we continue to grow. We continue to embrace all neurodivergence across all our team members, not just within our peer support team, but we have lots of clinicians who are neurodivergent as well, leaders in the team, and that's the right thing to do. We also don't exclude neurotypical. It's important it's blended because we're influencing neurotypical, so we need to know what their view and perception is. So we'll continue to grow as an organisation. We're really excited to be, we're just developing our ADHD medication pathway at the moment to make sure that we get a whole holistic pathway for everyone coming through. And we're also developing our own internal dyslexia pathway. So they're the two things for this year that are our priorities in focusing. But our ambition is to become, or to be seen, the National Centre of Excellence around all neurodivergence. And providing contributions to the research evidence base, as well as that kind of strong national leadership and clinical expertise as well.
It's amazing. Very exciting, and it is
Very exciting.
I will be watching you throughout the journey. I do have a question about the bus. How's it? So you think bus?
Yes.
Can you tell me about?
Oh, yes. So our bus is called George. George came with us probably a couple of months ago now. So George is just having a whole makeover, big revamp. But George is our sensory bus. So space is a real premium. So it provides us another space to see our children and young people, particularly in a space that's less clinical focus. Will help provide sensory integration to these young people as well, a communication space, but also to break down barriers to play for a lot of our young people as well. So we know big soft play centres are really hard for some of our young people to access. So this will be a smaller space where you will be able to book it out when George is ready to go, to come and book for just some simple play. We don't need to medicalise everything, but it's a safe space where you can come with the siblings, book out some time and still enjoy those things as well and get some of that energy out. But because George is mobile, because he's a bus, it also means we can come to you, which is great. So George will be travelling the country far and wide. We are on the lookout for a lovely bus driver at the moment. So if anyone in Repertoire watching this is a bus driver, do get in touch. But yeah, we're really excited about George, our bus, because hopefully this will build on this inclusivity and creative ways to the problems. George is definitely a representation of my dyslexic brain.
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely. And just to double check, it's open to the public, right?
It will be,
Yeah, clients.
no, it will be open to everyone. So you just need to contact us and we'll work that out and we'll show you. So we'll have some open sessions for also if you want to book it independently, party or for your young person, or maybe you just want to come and play. We'll have that booking system. So just keep it on our social media. We'll be sharing that information as George goes through his complete makeover and a bit of a revamp inside, which is very exciting.
That's very, very exciting. And I love the idea. I'll definitely remember you. We will hire it for sure.
Brilliant.
And now a few more personal questions. As we approach the end of the interview. Who is your biggest support on your journey? I think I know that, but
it would definitely be my husband. I couldn't do any of this without him. We're definitely a partnership. There's been some incredibly difficult times. While I'm a very positive person, there's been times through, and again, you'll read it in the book, so definitely get the book, where things have been in a very dark place, and he's always been there next to me, believing in me, believing in my approach, believing in the values of Autism Oxford UK, believing in our children, and I just couldn't do it without him. So he's definitely my best cheerleader. I've got a few cheerleaders, which is very nice and very humbling, but he's definitely by far been the best support, and just couldn't have done it without him.
I love the love story. Being very cheesy. So
It's definitely a love story. It is. We've been together too many years now, and being teen parents, often again statistics would be that we wouldn't be here. We still wouldn't be happily married. We are, and I'd say we're happier now than when we first started. So, it's been a real pleasure to be able to grow alongside him and our children at the same time. That's one of the advantages of being a teen parent.
yeah, definitely. And how do you treat yourself with regards to your well-being? Any hobbies?
I wish I had some hobbies. That'd be nice. Being a busy a nurse, CEO, son, mum, there's not much time left over. I think most of my time for me is in the bar. I'm a real water person. Love a bath, love a book, a podcast, and so I often listen to this podcast. It's a lovely place just to reset throughout the busyness of the world around. But I think what else kind of fills my tank with all my spirits would be my children. It's an absolute pleasure to go and watch my youngest daughter play basketball, my middle daughter in her gymnastics. I get a lot back from doing that as well, and a lot of pleasure, because they are my why. They are why I'm here. It's why I do what I do. So actually seeing the benefits of that show in terms of their confidence grow and them blossom. I don't think you could do anything else for my well-being other than just making sure they're doing brilliantly and having their best life.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not about having that physical hobby, which again is very much societal value, and something that very typical to see.
My view, they'll come when I retire.
Yep.
I'll do all my hobbies. I'm a very active person, very creative person, would love time to draw. But the reality is life doesn't allow for that. And actually that's not my priority right now. My priority is my why, and that's my children and my lovely family. And my family goes much wider with the Autism Oxford team, and kind of they're included in that. So as long as they're all okay, I'm a very happy camp.
Yeah, that's great. And who is your biggest inspiration, if you have one?
Oh, that is, I don't have one actually. I have, again, because I'm my multiple hats and stuff, it's really hard to I would definitely say Sarah Davis is someone I looking for, and I watch her stuff and I'm like, I want to be just like you when I grow up. I'm growing up. And she's definitely an inspiration for me as a working mum, and how she's very personable, and how she's managed to create something from nothing ultimately. And she'll talk about that in her business as an entrepreneur. And the way she does this is kind. It's not ruthless. It's not like to hurt people or any of that. It doesn't need to be like atmosphere. So she would definitely be one of mine. Stephen Bartlett is because of he's an underdog, and my underdog side coming up through those ranks, like, shouldn't have succeeded. Everything was against me. I shouldn't be here statistically, should not be in the position I'm in. And he's the same. And so he's massively, and I'm just well respecting of him. Not so much a fanboy in terms of, I'm like, kudos to you. I'm here alongside you. Get it, understand it. And then lastly would be Karen Bravey for her work ethic. And I get a lot of care and compassion from people who are again, you work too hard, you work all the time, do you ever stop? How do you do it? And they all come from really compassionate place, but I do it because I love it. And actually, I don't separate Autism Oxford or work, as some people would call it, with home, because it's also meshed. Like, Autism Oxford is here because of my why at home. And my why at home is feeding work. So how can I separate that out? And actually, like most parents will want to do the best by their kids. They would do anything for their children. So why would I stop? And her work ethic is very similar, driven by a different thing. Hers is driven by this need for independence. And I certainly probably can resonate with some of that. But actually it's for my why and making sure that my children have the best life that they can possibly have. So they're my three. Sorry, it's not one, but there's three. It's five.
I feel like you are unable to separate Autism Oxford from family and from your personal life, because it's clear that you are working on something that's your passion. So therefore it doesn't feel like work. So you just do it because it's a part of you.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Yeah. And we talk a lot about being AO'd. So when you spend some time here, you'll hear people go, I've been AO'd, because the team get the same feeling. And often we recruit and end up with people very similar values based. I'm here because I've got that passion, and it's very infectious in terms of that drive and stuff. And that's how we're able to offer such a beautiful service to our client group. We're very lucky because we have such a wide team. I'm just one person, and while my brain's pretty okay, pretty helpful at times, it's one brain, and I need the brain of all those fairly young people to get the excellence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And if you were a superhero or had a power, who would that be?
I don't know with this one. So it's really interesting because I'm a simple person, but I think if I had a superpower, I would love to be able to read people's minds with not to go, but so I can understand people's narrative backgrounds, because I want to be able to support, I want to be able to help, and I want to be able to meet people where they are. And I think from an advocacy point of view, that makes that a lot quicker, that job, because if I can understand why that nurse is saying those things in front of me, how many clients or patients has she seen, that means that she's asked me, why are you the problem? That helps me influence that. And the same, if someone is really struggling over something that would be perceived as something quite straightforward, if I have an understanding as this whole multi-layered of trauma or adverse life events building in there, that helps me to meet the person where they are.
Yeah, and with non-verbal people as well.
Absolutely, non-speaking is really important, that we can build in and understand, have those insights. Though I don't know if sometimes if I want, because I think how we treat non-speaking people is probably still not I know it's nowhere near where it used to be. And some of the views probably, and understandably and rightly, will probably be quite rude, because we're very rude in how we communicate with non-speaking people. So yeah, that might be a very harsh reality to hear and see.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, reading minds, I think, is one of the most wanted superpowers. If I look at my previous guests, I think I had 3 or 4 already. So
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, that's good. And if you had the chance to go back in time and meet your younger self, what would you tell young Kim?
So we often refer to her as Little Kim, and she's referred to as in Little Kim in the book. I would let her know that she is enough, and she is good enough. And it'd be just as simple as that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And if your heart had a voice, what would you tell us?
my heart would tell me internally that you got this, keep going, well done, would be a real cheerleader. Externally to other people would be, how can I help?
That's very good. Thank you so much, Kim.
It was my pleasure.
Amazing. Yeah, I would continue. I would stay here the whole day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great experience. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me at Autism Oxford. And thanks everyone for watching or listening. And I'll see you on that site at some point very soon. Thank you.
Bye.